My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old and I live in Portland, Oregon. I own a small interior design firm called Westfield Design. It's not the kind of company that gets written up in glossy magazines, at least not yet, but it's mine. We specialize in designing intimate spaces, from studio apartments and townhomes to tiny cafes tucked between buildings on side streets. Spaces that breathe, that make people feel something when they walk through the door. I didn't build it with investment capital or a trust fund. I built it from scratch, one referral at a time. I earn enough to support my family. My husband Noah is an electrical engineer, and our daughter Lily, 8 years old, sharp-eyed and bursting with questions, is the joy that lights up every gray Pacific Northwest morning. We're not wealthy. Far from it. But we've carved out a life full of love, if not luxury. Our 2-bedroom apartment faces a small park, where you can hear the sound of children's laughter carried through the trees in the afternoon. Sometimes that's all I need. The life I have now, modest, quiet, filled with real affection, is a stark contrast to the one I was born into. I grew up in Lake Oswego, a suburb just outside Portland known for its sprawling homes and polished facades. My parents, Gregory and Elaine Whitaker, ran in circles where reputation was a currency and image was everything. My father owned a prominent high-end furniture store, Whitaker's Fine Living, that had served the wealthy locals for decades. My mother? She was the kind of woman who never left the house without a pearl necklace, a matching handbag, and a sentence that sounded rehearsed. Her words were always smooth, always calculated. They projected perfection to the outside world. The gracious hosts, the enviable couple, the model family framed in expensive family portraits displayed above their fireplace. But behind the velvet drapes and the catered dinner parties, I saw something else, something cold. Truth is, in our house, love wasn't something you felt. It was something you earned or tried to. And even then, it wasn't guaranteed. I have a younger brother, Jason, 2 years my junior. From as early as I can remember, I understood an unspoken rule. Effort didn't equal attention. Achievement didn't earn affection. Love wasn't a response, it was a performance. And Jason? He was always the star of the show. When I got a perfect score on my 8th grade math exam, my mother looked up from her cup of tea and said, "Good. That's what we expect of you." The next month, Jason brought home a B+ on his history paper, and my parents threw a small party. I remember standing in the kitchen while they cut a cake that said, "Well done," like he'd just published a book or saved someone's life. I stood in the corner, watching the streamers fall, knowing I could never make them proud like he could. But I never hated Jason. He didn't ask for their favoritism. He just existed, and people gravitated toward him. Jason was charming in the way some people are born to be, quick with a smile, good with names, and always ready with the right thing to say. I was the opposite. Quiet. Focused. I didn't dress to impress, didn't like making small talk with my parents' dinner guests. In their eyes, I lacked what mattered most, presentation. I got a part-time job at 16 to pay for my own textbooks, while Jason had his car paid for on his birthday. I studied architecture at the University of Chicago and paid my way with scholarships and freelance drafting jobs. When I got my acceptance letter, I told my parents with a hopeful heart. My mother barely looked up from her planner. That must have taken a lot of effort. "Try your best," she said, and went back to noting hors d'oeuvres for her next luncheon. When Jason got accepted into a local community college the following year, they rented a hall for his going-away party. There was a jazz band, a 3-tier cake, a slideshow of his childhood photos set to piano music. They posted photos with the caption, "So proud of our beloved son, off to do great things." I stopped expecting them to notice me. I stopped hoping. I poured everything into building something of my own. Westfield Design began in a tiny co-working space above a flower shop downtown. I had 2 clients and 1 second-hand drafting table. Took years of unpaid internships, sleepless nights, and navigating the maze of Portland's zoning regulations, but eventually I signed my name to a lease on a narrow storefront with tall windows and creaky floorboards. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And then one rainy March afternoon, Noah walked into my life. He was hired to install a smart lighting system in a model apartment I was redesigning for a boutique real estate firm. We met over wires and blueprints, but ended up talking about light and shadow, color psychology, and how certain rooms made people feel more alive. We were married a year later. Then came Lily. She had Noah's dimpled smile and my insatiable curiosity. She was born during a particularly chaotic season. We were juggling contracts, clients, and loans, but none of it mattered. We'd sit on the living room floor and watch her try to roll over, tiny fists in the air like she was fighting gravity itself. The first few years weren't easy. There were nights I cried over bills, mornings we skipped breakfast to save groceries for dinner. But we had each other, and Lily was the kind of child who made life worth every sacrifice. There was only one thing I hadn't done: get full health insurance for our family. I don't know why I kept putting it off. Every time we looked into it, the premiums felt like an avalanche, too heavy, too constant. I kept telling myself we'd sign up next quarter, after the next big project, after the rent got easier. We were healthy. We had savings. We'd be fine. We had time. At least that's what I believed, until the day everything changed. Began subtly. Lily started coughing on a chilly October evening. The wind had picked up around our apartment complex, rustling the dry leaves across the pavement like soft whispers. First, I thought it was just a cold. She still laughed at Noah's silly impressions, still asked for her usual bedtime story. But the cough didn't go away. At night it deepened, waking her. Her chest would heave slightly as if her breath was too heavy for her tiny frame. We took her to a clinic. The doctor said it was likely mild bronchitis, prescribed a syrup and told us to monitor her. But I saw it in his eyes, the concern that didn't match the casual tone of his voice. A week later, she was drawing in the living room when she suddenly paused, placed a hand on her chest and whispered, "Mommy, my heart feels funny." My own heart skipped. I knelt beside her, touching her forehead. She was cold, too cold. "Noah," I called out. "Start the car." The rest happened in fragments: city traffic, the scent of hospital antiseptic, the image of Lily's small form lying on a bed too big for her. Tests were run. Hours passed. We waited under the fluorescent lights, Noah holding my hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. When the doctor returned, his expression was tight. "There's a mass in her left lung," he said. "It appears to be benign, but its location is dangerous. It's pressing against her airway. If we don't operate, her condition could deteriorate quickly." I heard the words, but they didn't register. Not until he added, "The surgery needs to happen within 72 hours. And then the number, $98,000. I remember staring at him as if he had just said the moon was falling. I didn't hear the rest. All I could think was, Lily. My daughter. My baby. She needed saving. And I didn't have what it took. Not yet. I don't remember how I got out of that chair. I just remember standing there, holding Lily's medical file and shaking hands, nodding automatically while the doctor explained something about post-operative care and monitoring. His voice had become a hum, like a distant engine, present but unintelligible. Noah was doing better at staying composed. He was always steadier under pressure than I was, even though I could see his eyes starting to glaze, his breath catching as the weight of the number set in. $98,000. We had about $115,000 in our savings, most of it hard-earned and meant to be our safety net, our down payment on a better apartment, Lily's future. If we used it all, we'd still be short, especially when you factored in post-op recovery, potential complications, prescriptions, and the weeks of work we'd likely have to miss. And even if we drained every cent we had, there wouldn't be anything left to fall back on, not even for rent. I remember sitting at Lily's bedside that night, the monitors blinking beside us like silent sentinels. Her skin looked too pale, her eyelids fluttering with the effort of rest. I watched her chest rise and fall, and I hated how shallow it was, like each breath was a fragile thing that could break with a sudden wind. That's when I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed softly in the darkness, casting light on the one contact I hadn't called in years. Mom! I stared at it. My thumb hovered. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some part of me still believed that blood meant something. That if anything could pull down the wall between us, it would be this. I pressed call. She picked up after 2 rings. Claire? Why are you calling so late? Her voice was light, clipped as ever. Not worried. Not curious. Just vaguely inconvenienced. I cleared my throat. Lily's in the hospital, I said. She needs emergency surgery. There's a mass in her lung. The doctor said. I paused, choking back the rising panic in my throat. We need help, Mom. Financial help. A silence followed. Then, oh Claire, this is really unfortunate timing. I blinked. What? Well, she said with an exhale, next week is your father's and my 40th wedding anniversary. You know that. Everything is already arranged. We've hired the band, the catering is finalized, and your father's speech has been written. You can imagine what a disruption this would be. The words didn't compute. Mom, she's 8. She's fighting to breathe. I'm not asking you to cancel your party. I'm asking for help. She's your granddaughter. I'm sorry, she said, colder now. I really am. But you've chosen to live your life independently, haven't you? We can't be expected to clean up after your poor planning. Poor planning. That was what she called our delay in getting insurance. That was what she thought of Lily's illness. Poor planning. I hung up without another word. I didn't trust myself to speak. The next day, I tried calling my father. He didn't pick up. I texted him, please. I know I haven't asked you for much, but we need help. I'll pay you back every penny. No response. I looked at Lily lying there, tubes in her arm, her chest rising with effort. And then I looked at the chart at the foot of her bed. The numbers. The countdown. Cost. I realized there was only one option left. I was going to walk through the front door of that house again. The house I had once called home. 2 days later, I drove Noah's old sedan through the gates of the Whitaker estate in Lake Oswego. The driveway was lined with black sedans and silver luxury cars. String lights danced in the late afternoon light, casting gold along the stone pathway. Soft music played from the backyard, something classical and elegant. I recognized it from the playlist my mother used during holiday parties. I should have known. The rehearsal dinner. Jason was getting married. Of course he was. I had forgotten the date, forgotten the event, until the full weight of the scene hit me. I stepped into the foyer and immediately felt it, opulence and ice all at once. Polished marble floors. Floral arrangements bigger than my daughter. Conversations floating like feathers in the air, not meant to land on someone like me. No one asked who I was. No one offered me a drink. To them, I was either the help or a distant mistake. Then I saw her, Elaine Whitaker, standing in a cluster of guests with a glass of champagne in her hand, laughing politely. I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years. I walked straight toward her, my bag gripped tightly, Lily's medical file tucked under my arm. Mom, I said. She turned, her expression immediately tensing at the sight of me. Claire, what are you doing here? I need 5 minutes, I said. It's about Lily. Her mouth tightened. Claire, this really isn't the time. It can't wait. She exhaled sharply, excused herself from the group, and pulled me aside. Your daughter, she said in a low voice. Still in the hospital? She needs surgery. Within 48 hours, I said, pulling out the file, opening to the scan. There's a mass. It's pressing against her airway. We've raised a portion of the cost, but we're still short. She barely glanced at the paper. We can't afford to help you, she said. The money is already tied up in this event. Jason and Natalie's wedding is a major social investment. It would be irresponsible to reallocate funds now. I stared at her. An 8-year-old girl is struggling to breathe. Your granddaughter. We all have responsibilities, Claire. I stepped back. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. I turned toward the dining hall, where I saw my father laughing with a group of men in matching blazers. Jason stood beside him, perfectly tailored, flashing his watch as he recounted some story. I walked straight up to them. "Dad," I said. He turned, startled. "Lily needs surgery. Please. I'm asking for your help." My father looked like he had just been handed a bill he didn't want to pay. "Claire, don't do this here." "I wouldn't if there were any other way." Jason gave a dry chuckle, sipping his drink. "Wow. Seriously? This is how you show up? You didn't plan and now it's our fault? She's dying." "She's your kid," he snapped. "Not mine." I looked back at my father. "She's your granddaughter." He said nothing, just nodded, as if closing a deal he wasn't interested in. That was the moment I knew something inside me had broken. Not a crack, but a clean, decisive break. I tucked the file back into my bag, straightened my coat, and walked out. Not a single person followed me. The night air was crisp as I stepped down the stone path. The lights twinkled behind me, warm and meaningless. I sat in the driver's seat, hands trembling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the dark and let the silence swallow me. By the time I got back to the hospital, the sky had darkened, a soft drizzle misting the streets of Portland. The droplets traced lines across the windshield as I parked in the visitor's lot and sat still for a moment, letting the hum of the engine and the faint patter of rain fill the space. I had gone there hoping. Even now, I can't tell you exactly what I hoped for. Maybe not a check. Maybe not forgiveness. But something. A hand on my shoulder. A quiet "we'll find a way." A flicker of humanity. Instead, I had been given silence. Worse than silence, dismissal. When I walked into Lily's room, Noah looked up from his chair beside her bed. He stood immediately and moved to me, concern written across every part of his face. "How did it go?" he asked. I shook my head and lowered myself into the chair next to him. My hands were still cold. "They said no," I whispered. Noah didn't ask why. He didn't ask for details. He just exhaled slowly and wrapped his arms around me. "I'm so sorry," he said into my hair. "We'll figure it out." "We will." Without them. I nodded, but it wasn't agreement. It was surrender. That night, as Lily lay asleep with her Ford dripping quietly beside her, I stared out the hospital window and made a decision. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to knock on doors that would never open for me. If blood didn't mean love, then I would stop treating it like it did. I reached into my bag and pulled out a notepad. On the first page, I wrote one word in bold letters. Everyone. And under it, I started a list. People I hadn't spoken to in years. Former classmates. Clients I had once helped redesign a nursery or organize a chaotic kitchen. The barista from the cafe who'd remembered my name even when no one else did. The next morning, I got to work. Noah sold his beloved pickup truck, the one we'd driven on our honeymoon to Crater Lake, the one Lily had named Benny when she was 3. I took photos of everything we owned that wasn't essential. My work laptop, our couch, the antique drafting table I'd kept since college, and posted them online. I wrote a post on social media, the hardest I'd ever written. My daughter Lily is in the hospital. She needs emergency surgery. We don't have insurance, and we can't afford to wait. If you can help, any amount, any connection, any advice, we need it now. Then I hit send. I didn't expect what followed. The first reply came within minutes, from Anna, my college roommate. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. She was a music teacher now, still wearing secondhand cardigans and teaching violin lessons out of her garage. She sent $500. With it, a message. I know it isn't much, but it's everything I have saved this month. I remember how you used to help me study while building models till 2 a.m. I believe in you, Claire. Lily's going to make it. I sat on the edge of the hospital bed and cried so quietly I thought my lungs would collapse. Then came more. A neighbor I barely knew dropped off $50 in cash in an envelope with a note. For Lily. You helped me pick a paint color for my living room and it made me feel proud of my home again. Travis, one of the youngest designers at my firm, walked into my office on his lunch break and placed a small envelope on my desk. I was going to buy a new laptop this weekend, he said. But I think Lily needs it more than I do. He gave me $320, everything he had. We sold furniture, kitchen appliances, lamps, even our living room rug. I bartered, haggled, and posted daily. Noah worked overnight shifts when he could, coming home with bloodshot eyes and a whisper of a smile. We managed to raise nearly $29,000 in 3 days. It wasn't enough, but it was something. And then, just as I was preparing to take out a high-interest loan, knowing what it would do to our future, knowing I would still say yes, Noah's parents called. Paul and Marianne weren't rich. They lived in a modest split-level home in Beaverton they'd bought when Noah was 10. They had refinanced it once during the 2008 crisis and had just paid off their final mortgage installment the year before. They came to visit Lily that evening. Marianne brought banana bread. Paul brought a quiet sort of gravity that made me sit up straighter. After checking on Lily, he asked Noah and me to step outside the room with him. In the morning, he said, I want you both to come by the house. We have something to discuss. I furrowed my brow. What is it? Marianne stepped forward and took my hand in hers. Just come. Please. The next morning, we pulled up to their home and immediately noticed what was missing. The sofa was gone. Several paintings had been removed from the walls. Boxes were stacked in corners. Marianne handed me a mug of tea and led us to the kitchen table where a single envelope sat. Paul slid it across to me. Inside were legal documents, a signed agreement for the sale of their house. The number printed on the bottom line nearly made me drop the paper. $136,000. I looked up, stunned. No. You didn't. Why? Paul met my eyes. Because Lily only has one life. And if we didn't help you save it, then what good is a house? I blinked hard, trying to hold the tears back. Marianne smiled gently, brushing a hand over mine. We can rent. We can downsize. But we can't replace our granddaughter. There are no words for that kind of love. Only actions. 3 days later, we had the full amount. The hospital scheduled the surgery immediately. Lily was prepped the next morning. Her fingers clutched the small beaded necklace she'd made in art class the week before, pink and purple beads strung together with a clumsy charm that read, Love. She gave it to me right before they wheeled her into the operating room. Mom, she whispered, her voice weak but steady. Keep this with you so you don't worry. I'm gonna be okay. And then the doors closed behind her. The operation lasted 6 hours. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember if I spoke. I just remember staring at the hallway clock, each tick louder than the last. When the surgeon finally emerged, his scrubs wrinkled and his face weary, I stood up so fast my chair clattered behind me. It was a success, he said. The mass has been removed. Lily's airway is clear. She's going to recover. I don't remember anything after that. Only Noah's arms catching me before I collapsed. 3 days after the surgery, Lily opened her eyes. Her cheeks had color again. Her breathing was steady. Coughing had stopped. She was weak but present. She smiled when she saw us sitting beside her, our hands in hers. Did it snow while I was sleeping? She asked softly. We laughed and we cried. Not loud, not broken, but with the quiet, shaking kind of relief that sinks into your bones and makes you believe in tomorrow again. By the time Lily was discharged from the hospital, Noah and I were running on fumes. Emotionally, financially, physically. We'd lost nearly everything we owned. We had no furniture, no savings. Our bills had been deferred but not forgiven. And yet, somehow, I didn't feel broken. Something inside me had shifted. Hardened, maybe. But not in the bitter way I feared it might. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at the world. Not even at my parents. Not really. I was focused. After everything that had happened, after the calls, the begging, the silence, I understood something I hadn't before. I didn't need them. Not Gregory and Elaine. Not the family name. Not the store or the pedigree or the social ladder I was never invited to climb. I had found something more powerful than their approval. I had found the people who chose me. And I had no intention of wasting the life they helped me save. Back in our apartment, I made a promise. Not to take revenge. Not to prove a point. But to build something that no one could take away from me. Something strong enough to shelter Lily for the rest of her life. Something real. That first week, I woke up at 4:30 every morning, slipping out of bed while Noah and Lily slept. I opened my laptop and began reviewing everything, our design process, our contracts, our budgeting model. I streamlined our billing system, rewrote our website copy, hired a marketing intern, and sent cold emails to every small business in the Portland metro area that looked like they needed a makeover. By day, I met with clients. I walked through half-finished homes and coffee shops with chip tiles and said things like, "Yes, we can do this," even when I didn't yet know how. By night, I returned home to Lily's quiet voice asking for bedtime stories, and to Noah warming up leftovers on the stove. We rebuilt piece by piece. Then came the spa chain in the northern suburbs. Then a boutique hotel renovation in Bend. Then a partnership with an emerging wellness brand based in Seattle. Within a year, Westfield Design had grown from a name only a few locals knew to a respected boutique firm with a waitlist 2 months out. People started to notice. One day, I got a call from a journalist at Visionary Living magazine. She'd heard about our unique approach to design, emotional resonance, human-centered spaces, and wanted to do a feature. The headline ran on the front page of their spring edition. Claire Whitaker, the designer who turned pain into purpose. Inside, there was a photo of me standing in front of a construction site, blueprint in hand, with Lily beside me in her paint-splattered sneakers and braids slightly undone. Caption read, "Mother. Builder. Survivor." That issue spread quickly. Not just in Portland, but beyond. A month later, I received an email from the producers of a talk show called Echoes of Strength. They featured stories of resilience, of ordinary people who had overcome impossible odds. They wanted me to come to New York and tell mine. I almost said no. But then I thought of Lily, and Anna, and Travis, and Paul and Marianne, and every person who had stepped up when my own blood had turned away. So I went. I sat under the hot lights, microphone clipped to my collar, fingers slightly trembling. The host asked me everything, from my childhood to the hospital room, from the calls I made that went unanswered to the ones that changed everything. I told the truth. Calmly. Clearly. Without names, without blame. But the truth doesn't always need names. The audience listened in silence. The end of the interview, the host leaned forward, her eyes kind but sharp. "If you could say one thing to the people who abandoned you in your darkest moment," she asked, "what would it be?" I paused. Then I smiled. "Thank you," I said. "'Cause of them, I stopped waiting for love from people who didn't know how to give it. And because of them, I found my real family, the ones who showed up when it counted." Crowd erupted in applause. Not the loud, performative kind, but the kind that vibrates in your chest and says, "We heard you." The episode aired 2 weeks later. And that was when the storm truly began. People connected the dots. didn't take long for internet sleuths to link me to Gregory and Elaine Whitaker. To Whitaker's fine living. To Jason Whitaker, the rising star in real estate who had once posted a photo of a $330,000 engagement ring with the caption, "She said yes." An anonymous Twitter account reposted a clip from the interview with the caption, "Parents spend hundreds of thousands on an engagement party, refuse to save dying granddaughter. Daughter now owns one of the fastest-growing design firms in the Pacific Northwest." Clip went viral. Review sites for Whitaker's fine living were flooded with one-star ratings. Customers canceled orders. Industry contacts pulled out quietly. Jason's real estate firm began bleeding clients. I didn't do any of it. I didn't comment. I didn't retaliate. I simply kept working. Then one afternoon I received a letter in the mail. Yellow paper. Elegant cursive. My mother's handwriting. "Claire, we have lost everything. Your father is selling the house. Jason is unemployed. Our reputation is ruined. I know we were wrong. I know you may never forgive us. But please, if you have any mercy left in your heart, help us. $200,000 is all we need. After that, we will never bother you again." I read the letter 3 times. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Just to feel it. To understand that it was real. That everything had come full circle. I placed the letter in my desk drawer and closed it quietly. I felt no satisfaction. No glee. Only clarity. They had made their choices. And so had I. In the months that followed, I made a list. Not of those who hurt me, but of those who saved me. I visited Anna and gave her a check large enough to finally start her own music school. I gave Travis a full scholarship to the Design Institute in Chicago he once thought was out of reach. And on Marianne's birthday, I drove her and Paul out to a quiet cul-de-sac in Beaverton. We pulled into the driveway of their old house, the one they'd sold to save Lily. She blinked, confused. "Claire." I handed her a set of keys. And a copy of the deed. "It's yours again," I said. She cried into my chest for 10 full minutes. Paul just held my hand and didn't let go. 1 year after Lily's surgery, we built a new home on the edge of the city. It had wide windows, a garden in the back, and room enough for all of us: Noah, Lily, Paul, Marianne, and the second child we were quietly expecting. It wasn't a mansion. But it was warm. It was safe. It was ours. Every morning I woke up to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Lily's laughter. And every night as I kissed her goodnight, she would whisper, "Mom, you're my superhero." And I would smile, hold her close, and whisper back, "No, sweetheart. You're mine." It was early December when the call came. The light in my office had begun to fade. Outside, the city was draped in a soft gray fog, Portland's winter rhythm settling in with its usual quiet indifference. I was finishing revisions on a spa renovation proposal, a half-drunk mug of chamomile tea going cold by my side, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Something in me already knew. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. And then I picked up. "Claire," came the voice on the other end. Thin. Trembling. Familiar in the way a scent from childhood can be familiar, painful and oddly detached. It was my mother. I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. "I'm sorry to call like this," she said. "But we're in trouble." I didn't answer. She continued, each word weighted with years of silence, her once polished composure cracking around the edges. "The bank is seizing the house. Your father, he took out a second mortgage to keep the store open after the fallout, but we couldn't keep up with the payments. Jason's firm is collapsing. His wedding was called off. And now they were losing everything." "Claire," she said softly, "I know I don't deserve to ask, but if you could help us, just this once, $200,000 would save the house." There it was. The number. the plea. I almost laughed, not out of malice but out of the bitter irony of it. I had stood in front of that very house once, medical file in hand, voice trembling as I begged to save my daughter. And they had turned me away without so much as a pause between champagne toasts. Now they stood at the same edge I had, only they had chosen their path. They'd walked me there, in fact. "I'm not saying no," I said after a long silence. Her breath caught. I could hear it. "But I have one condition." "Anything," she replied quickly. "You and Dad must come to my office. In person. If you want this money, you will look me in the eye when you ask for it." She hesitated, then agreed. 2 days, I said. Friday. Noon. And I hung up. When they walked into my office on the 3rd floor of Westfield Design that Friday, I didn't recognize them at first. They were older, thinner. Their clothes were still neat, but not designer. My mother's coat was worn, her hair not as perfectly curled. My father looked like a man who had aged a decade in the span of one. They stepped into the conference room, bright, clean, filled with the smell of new construction materials and eucalyptus diffusers. On the table sat a single black briefcase. Inside was $200,000 in cashier's checks. I didn't stand when they entered. I didn't smile. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. They sat. My mother cleared her throat. "Claire." "This money," I interrupted, "is not a gift. It's a one-time offer. You take it and we part ways. Forever." My father blinked. My mother paled. "No contact. No visits. No calls. I will not be a resource. I will not be a safety net. From this moment forward, you will no longer be my parents in any way that matters." They both opened their mouths, almost in unison, but I raised a hand. "Not out of revenge," I said. "Not because I want to punish you, but because I have something to protect now. A daughter, a family, and peace that took me everything to build. You forfeited the right to be part of it the day you let her suffer because appearances were more important than blood." The silence in the room was suffocating. "I'm giving you this," I added, gesturing to the briefcase, "so you don't end up on the street. But this is the last time you will ever get anything from me." My mother sobbed quietly. My father looked at the floor. Then, without a word, he stood and took the case. They walked out without looking back. I stayed in the room long after the door clicked shut. Not victorious. Not vindicated. Just quiet. That was the end of a story that had begun long before I was old enough to know I was in it. And I had written the final line. At home, Noah wrapped his arms around me after I told him what happened. "You did the right thing," he said. I nodded. I believed him. Paul and Marianne didn't say much when I told them. Marianne hugged me. Paul just patted my shoulder once, firm and warm. "You chose peace," he said simply. "That's harder than choosing pride." I didn't reply. I just watched Lily play in the backyard, chasing the first snowflakes of the season with her mittened hands stretched toward the sky. She had no idea what I had just severed, and I hoped she never would. The months passed. The business flourished. We moved into our new home the following spring, a sprawling but cozy structure nestled on the edge of a wooded hill just outside Portland. It wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. Noah had helped design it. Marianne had chosen the colors for the kitchen tiles. Paul built the front porch swing with his own hands. And Lily had painted a mural in her room, a big tree with a girl reading beneath it, stars in the branches. In May, I gave birth to our second child, a boy we named Simon. He had Lily's eyes and Noah's quiet steadiness. When Lily held him for the first time, she whispered, "I'm gonna teach you everything." And I believed her. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, nursing Simon in the soft light of the nursery or watching Lily teach him how to build blanket forts, I would remember my parents. Not with longing. Not even with sadness. just as a closed book. A chapter that had been read, understood, and shelved. Some losses I had learned weren't meant to be mourned. They were meant to be survived. The story, of course, didn't end there. My interview continued to circulate online. More and more people reached out. People who had lived parallel lives. People who had stood in front of families that had turned them away. They wrote letters, emails, sent voice messages. One from a woman in Vermont read, "I left my parents after they tried to silence my abuse. Your story gave me permission to stop feeling guilty. Thank you." Another from a man in Arizona. "I donated $5 to your fundraiser 3 years ago. I'm so glad your daughter made it. I'm so glad you made it. It was overwhelming. It was humbling. And it was healing in ways I didn't know I still needed. I decided to create something out of it. A fund. Not a nonprofit. Not a massive organization. Just a quiet fund called Second Shelter, a private grant given anonymously to parents in crisis. Parents facing medical emergencies, housing loss, or abandonment with nowhere to turn. The first family we helped was a single mom in Idaho whose son had leukemia. We covered his surgery. The second was a transgender teen in Oregon who had been kicked out by their parents. We paid their college application fees. Each letter I wrote to the recipients ended the same way. You are not alone. You are seen. You are strong. Claire. I didn't put my name on the website. I didn't want recognition. I just wanted the pain to mean something. To become something. Jason never reached out again. From what I gathered through acquaintances, he moved to Los Angeles, trying to restart his career in a new city. The Whitaker name didn't carry as much weight there. He struggled. He adapted. I didn't know more than that. I didn't want to. My parents sent one more letter, a year after our final meeting. It was short. Claire, we hope you're well. We wanted to let you know we are moving to a small apartment in Vancouver. We won't contact you again. We hope one day you will find it in your heart to forgive us. Elaine and Gregory. I read it once, then placed it in the same drawer as the first. I never replied. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not about absolution. It's about release. And I had already let go. That summer, Lily started learning how to ride a bike. The first time she pedaled on her own, she shrieked with joy. Noah cheered. Paul clapped from the porch. Marianne wiped tears from her cheeks. And I ran after her with Simon in a carrier against my chest, laughing so hard I thought my ribs would crack. This was my family. This was my legacy. Not the name I was born with, but the one I built with my own 2 hands. And no one could take that from me again. He sat down, silent for a long moment, then whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." I smiled. "Now go build something breathtaking." Of all the names on my list, the most sacred were Paul and Marianne. No one had done more. They had sold the roof over their heads without hesitation. They had moved into a cramped rental apartment, filled with plastic tubs and secondhand furniture. They had watched their son's family rise while quietly making do with less. But they never once complained. I remember watching Paul wrap their dinnerware in newspaper the day they moved out, his hand lingering over the ceramic pie plate Marianne had used every Thanksgiving. I remember her watering the potted basil on the windowsill, knowing she wouldn't be able to take it with her. I remembered everything. So I made a plan. Took months of careful research. I tracked the couple who had bought their house. I waited. Negotiated. Waited some more. When the house came back on the market, I bought it quietly under my business name. I didn't tell them. Not yet. I waited until Marianne's birthday. That evening, we brought them over to our home for dinner, just us, the kids, and a homemade lasagna. After the meal, I handed Marianne a small gift box. Inside was a familiar key and a copy of the deed. She stared at it, confused at first. Then realization bloomed across her face like a slow sunrise. "You didn't," she whispered. "I did," I said. "It's yours again. All of it. Welcome home." She burst into tears. Paul stood slowly and gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. There were no words for what passed between us. Only breath. Only tears. Only the kind of silence that says everything. I knew then that I wanted to do more than give back privately. I wanted to create something bigger, something that lived beyond me. That was when the idea of the foundation returned. We named it the Lily Fund, not after Lily directly, but for what she represented. Fragility. Resilience. The beauty that can grow in the murkiest of waters. The Lily Fund offered emergency grants for families facing unexpected medical crises without insurance. Quiet help. No red tape. No press. Just compassion. We kept it anonymous. But word spread. In its first year, we helped 12 families. Then 35. The stories were all different, but the fear was always the same. That cruel kind of panic when your child's life hangs in the balance and the world demands a price you can't afford to pay. We didn't fix the system. But we changed lives. One family. One breath. One bill at a time. As Westfield Design's reputation grew, we were invited to design the interior of a new luxury apartment complex being built in downtown Portland, part of a revitalization initiative. It was our biggest contract yet, worth over $1 million. After the deal closed, a reporter from a national design magazine reached out for a cover story. She wanted to talk about my career, my rise, my philosophy. During the interview, she asked, "What drove you to this level of success?" I didn't hesitate. "My daughter almost died," I said plainly. And when I asked my family for help, they refused. I realized I had to become the kind of woman no one could ignore again. Not for revenge, but for survival. She paused. "Do you ever regret going public with your story?" I smiled. The truth doesn't need permission. And it never asked to be quiet. The story went viral. Again. But this time there was no fallout to fear. There were only ripples of inspiration. Designers. Parents. Survivors. They reached out. They shared their stories. And they passed the message forward. You are not alone. You are not invisible. And you are not broken. The day we opened our new headquarters, a renovated warehouse space turned creative sanctuary, we held a private gathering with our team and closest supporters. The center of the space stood a small plaque, affixed to the wall above the main entrance. Designed to heal. In honor of every room where love outlived pain. CW. That night, I stood in that room, holding Simon on my hip and watching Lily twirl to the music Noah played through the sound system he installed himself. I saw Paul and Marianne laughing with Travis and Anna, wine glasses in hand. I saw our team, our clients, our community, all the hands that had built this with me. And I thought, this is what legacy looks like. Not fame, not fortune, but the rooms we create for others to feel safe in. The doors we open when the world tries to shut them. The lights we leave on, for the ones still trying to find their way home. By the time Lily turned 10, the house we built had grown into something more than just walls and rooms. It was a living memory. Every corner told a story: the bookshelf where Lily read to Simon, the garden where Marianne's tomatoes thrived, the swing Paul built that creaked softly in the wind. Kitchen always smelled like cinnamon and rosemary. The walls were lined not with art for appearance, but with scribbled drawings, framed first day of school photos, and handprints pressed into drying plaster. It was not perfect. It was real. And it was enough. I was enough. And then, one afternoon, my phone rang again. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew. It had been nearly 2 years since I'd seen my parents, since I handed them a briefcase full of money and closed the door behind them. I stared at the screen. I could have let it ring, but I answered. "Claire," my mother's voice came through, raspy and smaller than I remembered. "I know I said we wouldn't reach out again," she began. "But we're not well." There was no drama in her voice this time. No calculation. Just age. "Your father is sick," she said. They had no savings. No assets. The money I gave them had only delayed the inevitable. She had found work as a receptionist at a dentist's office. My father mostly stayed in their apartment in Vancouver, sleeping through days, disoriented by nights. "We don't want to come live with you," she said, perhaps sensing my thoughts. We don't know what else to do." And then, almost like an afterthought, "Jason's gone. We don't know where. We haven't heard from him in months." Silence stretched between us like an old wound cracking open. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I looked across the room at Lily, sitting on the floor teaching Simon how to sort puzzle pieces by color. This was my family now. My life. My responsibility wasn't to fix the people who broke me. It was to protect the ones who never had. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room under the soft amber glow of our corner lamp and played the conversation over and over in my mind. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't ready to welcome them back either. They were ghosts of a past I had outgrown. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about what it meant to be human, what it meant to have boundaries but also compassion. I made a decision. The next morning, I called a senior care placement counselor. I arranged for a quiet, clean assisted living facility just outside Vancouver. It wasn't luxurious, but it was comfortable, and it was paid in full for the next 2 years under a silent donation from a private foundation, one they would never know bore my name. I didn't visit. I didn't send a letter. I didn't ask for anything in return. But I gave them care. 'Cause I believe that how we treat those who fail us says something, not about them but about us. And I wanted to live with peace. Not guilt. Not revenge. Not the gnawing ache of what if. Peace. Months passed. Then a year. Life moved on, not in leaps but in rhythms. Westfield Design was featured in a national showcase. Simon took his first steps on the stone path outside our front door. Lily won an essay contest at school titled, "What Makes a Family?" In it, she wrote, "A family isn't always who you come from. Sometimes it's who you choose and who chooses you." My mom says love is a place you build, not just something you find. I think she's right. I wept when I read it. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. One sunny fall afternoon, I drove to the old Whitaker estate. The house I grew up in had been sold twice since my parents lost it. It was repainted now with new landscaping, a different fence. A young couple lived there. Children's bikes leaned against the garage. I didn't stop. I didn't knock. I just sat in my car for a few minutes and looked at the place that once represented everything I had chased and everything I had left behind. And I let it go. Right there on a quiet street in Lake Oswego, I let it all go. People still asked me, sometimes gently, sometimes directly, how I did it. How I survived the rejection, the abandonment. How I managed to rebuild a life, a company, a legacy. The answer was never dramatic. I simply chose love every time someone tried to teach me cruelty. I chose boundaries every time someone tried to weaponize closeness. And most of all, I chose not to carry shame that was never mine. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove something to people who will never understand what we're made of. But when we finally stop, when we finally rest in our own worth, we find that the ones who really matter never needed proof in the first place. They just needed presence. One evening, while Simon slept and Lily was curled up with her head in my lap, I pulled out the same leather notebook where I'd once written the names of everyone who helped us. There was still space left. I added a few more names, people we had helped through the Lily Fund. Families I'd never meet. Children whose futures were made possible by the kindness that had once been shown to me. I closed the notebook, pressed it to my chest, and finally allowed myself to feel it. Not grief, not resentment, not even pride, but peace. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken. The kind that lives in warm hands, in quiet rooms, in children's laughter echoing down the hallway of a house built not for show, but for healing. We all come from somewhere. But not all of us stay there. Some of us build homes out of nothing but hope and grit and the belief that we are worthy of joy. And when we do, we learn that family isn't just who shares your blood. It's who shares your table, your burdens, your heart. And if you're lucky, if you fight for it, it's who will carry your story forward long after you've put down the weight of the past. Not with vengeance, but with grace.